event? I'm fine, yeah. Okay. What I will show is a little bit of an introduction into how in Europe we're looking at the circular economy, and I base this on the next slide. Okay, good. Well, I usually start with the conclusion of my talks, and the conclusion is that I need to be here, or? Okay. Yes. Okay. And I will get started. Yeah. Okay, this is the third attempt to get started with my talk. But yeah, it's circular speaking. I think the conclusion is clear. There can be no credible climate future without moving from a linear model of economy to a circular model. So it's essential. What I'm doing here as a presentation is based on a report which we do every 5 years, where we bundle the best knowledge on climate and environment stuff for Europe. We launched it last year, but we also do a lot of work for the European Commission and the Parliament and the Council on circular economy in general. And I think the link that we need to make is the following. We know what the IPCC is saying on climate change and 1.5 degrees. This is the core of business here. We need to link it also to what the IPBES is saying on biodiversity ecosystem services. But much lesser known is the International Resource Panel, which is actually working on unsustainable resource practices and their impact on the two other parts. Yeah? I'm a member of the Resource Panel. They will launch their climate and resource report later on today, so I will not do it now, but there is a very close link that is clear. What all of these reports say is that, first of all, urgent action is needed because windows to deal with serious issues are closing. Secondly, we already see irreversible damage, so it's too late to really do full mitigation. Third, we start to see tipping points, and they could accelerate negative spirals of impact, and all of these are interconnected, not only in how they are linked in causal linkages in system Earth, but also in policies. If we fail on one of the three, we will fail on the other two. And that's why this circular economy and resource use is absolutely essential. This is the synopsis of where we are in Europe with environmental indicators from our report. So the trend lines are on top, the outlook to 2030 is on the bottom. Every key on this European piano of the environment is a bundle of policies for which we have data. You can tell that the future is not looking very bright, and that has to do with using too much energy and the wrong energy, the destruction of habitats and biodiversity, and in the end also how we use resources. So that's where the picture is rather clear, I think. This has an impact on natural capital, which is the foundational capital of this planet. I think we live in a system where we overvalue financial capital, undervalue social capital, and hardly value natural capital at all. And natural capital is suffering from resource use and its impacts. Land and soil is underestimated as a critical connector for these problems. And in Europe, we currently don't have any strong soil policy. We had 2 attempts, they both failed. It has to be on the agenda of this commission, the von der Leyen Commission. The marine environment, we focus a lot on plastic waste the last couple of years. I say waste is for the 2010s, the whales of the 1990s. But actually, how we treat our ocean resources is much closer linked to a broad use of resources, our digging of resources, the idea that we have a blue bonanza out there that we can now scrape off the bottom of the oceans for our new resource needs. This will not work if we don't do it in a sustainable way. Then we go into the resources themselves. This is a sobering picture with all the talk about circularity in Europe. We have, over the last 15 years, just moved from 8% circularity to 12% circularity. So we're just starting this turning around of things. even more sobering is the fact that we keep producing more waste. And this is counterintuitive for most citizens. They confuse better sorting waste and better handling waste with reducing waste. We keep producing more waste. This is the opposite direction of where we should go with circular economy. So we've got a lot of work to be done there. This is a critical slide in my opinion. If we want to have a strong circular economy where we keep materials and their values into the economic circle, we have to make materials and products and services that allow for that sort of circularity. And the fundamentals of every product is materials, and materials are made of molecules, and molecules are chemistry. The current chemicals which we use are risky to the environment and our health, but also not fit for purpose for strong circularity. So we need to go to principles of green chemistry and principles of safe by design and made for circularity. That's a big transition we need to make. The link with climate change is obvious and central to this conference, so I will race you through this one. I only have 10 minutes, okay? Our core message in the report is that if we do not go to policies that go to the fundamental drivers of unsustainability, systemic policies, we will never turn things around. So the incremental little messing in the margin times are over, yeah? Which means that we need to focus on the 4 key systems: the food system, the energy system, the mobility system, and the built environment, and focus on low carbon, circularity, and working within the boundaries of nature. Yeah? And that implies that we need to understand the linkages, we need to come with integrated policy frameworks and address some of these critical policy gaps, including chemicals. The EU did not deliver on its chemicals policy under the current action program, land and soil, as I mentioned, and also the whole food system and how that taps into things. This will not happen from the Berlaymont and from Brussels, neither from Stockholm or Helsinki or Oslo, not even from Reykjavik. It will happen from society, yeah? Which means businesses, cities, and citizens on board. It also means that we need to maneuver through 2 curves. One is inherently optimistic with experimentation, new technology, new models of circularity, which we can then accelerate. We need to do that. We're only at 12%. Yeah? Those need to be institutionalized, and then we will become more circular. But there's also this curve, which is a curve about moving away from things. So if we need to speed up and scale up solutions, we will need to speed up and scale up stopping things, stepping out of unsustainable practices, of linear economy, of misuse of resources, which means that we will need to phase out certain industries and activities. This will create conflicts, yeah? But if we understand them better, which is part of what we are doing with our agency, we can work with enabling conditions to not only end up not with stranded assets, but also not with stranded workers and stranded regions. Yeah? Okay. This, I think, is a critical slide in our report. It is a slide about what type of investments we are making in the big risk the next 10 years. The biggest risk is that we make the wrong investments. Investments that end up in dead-end streets, that the investments that are marginal efficiency gains in the systems that we already know. They might carry us to 2030, but never to 2050. Yeah? So we need to move from high costs of marginal efficiency gains and stranded asset logic to an investment in the future type logic. And this will require very different models, amongst which circular economy. Yeah? It also means that we need to design products in a different way and systems that a lot of the industry is now talking about, going from home delivery systems, 3D printing, sharing economy models. And the analysis which we have done is that they can all work, maybe, but it will depend on governance. So setting standards, setting norms, and pushing sectors, industries, investments in a certain direction by governance models. On their own, they're not spontaneously all of a sudden going to transform dominant models into other models. So governance remains important. If we want to work with the circular economy, we also need to monitor and understand it better. And currently, we only monitor inputs in megatons, what you could say. We monitor outputs in terms of waste, and a little bit of stuff in between. But we don't really monitor circularity. So one of the challenges will be to come with indicators and monitoring schemes that allow us to really understand whether we are moving towards circularity. This is hardly happening today, also not in Europe. In conclusion, linking our report, our latest overview report to this discussion, we think we need to do four things. One is to implement better what we are promising today, including on the circular economy. Secondly, we need to move away from these incremental marginal policies towards more systemic transitional policies in the core systems. Three, the big danger is that we would fall in the trap of the wrong type of investments, because then they lead to dead-end streets rather than to real innovation towards 2050. And the fourth message is that this can never be a government program on its own. It will be a societal type of program, otherwise we will never get there. So we will need to mobilize the creative forces in businesses, in cities, in citizen organizations, and that will be the way to go. I know I went very quickly through this, but I tried to cover the terrain that I was asked to cover, and there is a lot more in our stuff, so I'm happy to take any questions.